This video is a work of satire and not meant to be taken seriously. The majority of the information in this video is purely speculation or fake, so just relax, enjoy, and don't get in a fuss over characters from a Japanese visual novel series owned by Spike Chunsoft and published by NIS America, with anime adaptations licensed and distributed by Universal Japan and Funimation. Everything except for my own commentary is not owned by me. Also, this video will contain spoilers for every Danganronpa game/anime, including V3. Anyways, enjoy the video. Oh, hello. And welcome back to this insightful place. Today we are being taken to the land of spheres, pillars, and maybe some white substances somewhere too. It is the men's hour for their appendages to shine brightly, and I hope you all leave with at least something taken away from this analysis. But let's not lie to ourselves here.
Because it's fucking time for the moments you've been waiting for! The ultimate Danganronpa Man Dick Size Guy! It will be long, it'll be hard, and it may just leave a stain on your pants and possibly your attire too, but you'll see who rides up from the smallest of pussies to the grandest of cannons. Everything is based on speculation is probably inaccurate, but who the fuck cares? We're talking about wigs, bangs, guns, nuts, shalongs, and magnum dogs! And Danganronpa's probably got them all! Look at these men! They better have the stuff to impress each other or the hot stuff on the other side, or they'll be fucking dead! Whether it be little badasses, feminine boys, athletes, testosterone incarnate, or even dudes who look like ladies, they'll be measured and judged on their crotch!
So, if you are another man, I hope you enjoy. And if you are an interested woman, I hope you do too. Because the time has come, and so have I. Now let us finally begin. Just like my bust guide, this one will be divided into different tiers as well. Since exact measurements aren't available for all the guys, they'll be presented in my own made-up order, and each tier will cover a specific range, going from what I believe to be the lowest to highest of each. But that said, once again we'll, unfortunately, have to begin with a couple of the more unfortunate members of this great big cast. Ah yes, it's quite unfortunate to barely have something that could even be called a stick, but it's not like the guys here have had any good fortune coming to them anyway. So comes the ultimate virgin tier, where all of its subjects have dingers of up to 2 inches. If you're expecting me to talk about those kids in order to complete the roster, well, I regret to inform you I will not be discussing them. They're just kids after all. Why would I talk about some miniature flings belonging to some children? You are disgusting. Of course, I'll still gladly talk about the little ones possessed by the older guys. And our first subject is none other than the man who'll probably never impress a woman anyway, because all of his gals are fictional and non-existent. Not that I fault him for liking 2D women. After all, I'm a man who appreciates them too, but a real man finds pleasure in both the realms of fiction and reality. But that's enough build-up, because Hifumi Yamada's already got enough built up in his body. If you were to look at this man without many clothes and not burn your eyes, his little friend would almost seem invisible under the massive body present above. I wouldn't be surprised if the fat covered it all. Hell, considering how big he is, I have to wonder what his setup is when it's time for him to enjoy his waifus. However, despite his otherwise grotesque appearance, he does have the capacity to at least make some quality lewd content. After all, he's the ultimate doujin creator, and I highly doubt he hasn't made some erotic pieces before. And to be ultimate worthy, they must be something pleasant for the eyes to see and the pleasure center to experience. Well, depends on the content he bases his work off of, but that's getting too deep. Anyhow, while Hifumi does unfortunately possess the smallest of them all, he does have a record in one measurement, as he is the proud owner of the largest chest size in the series, with an utterly massive and bitterly unhealthy 150 centimeters / 5 feet. And this time, it's not the good 5 feet. Now, while Hifumi thankfully is mostly reserved to his 2D wives and the stories based on them, The next isn't so restrained. He's as fiery in his passions as his meals are delicious, but completely rejected by anyone he tries to flex his fetishes with. Oh, Teru Teru Hanamura, what a disappointing man you are. Understand, he wants to be some kind of Casanova, but he is simply incapable. His food might give you the kind of pleasure he wishes he could bring with a radish below his belt, but that radish is just a carrot. A baby carrot. Good luck pleasing anyone with that. Even without considering his lower parts, his personality is not exactly positive either. If you want to get with someone, it's probably not a good idea to continue making comments about others' bodies. It's disturbing and will probably get you into some trouble. Harassment is certainly not okay. And you could say Teru Teru ended up getting his comeuppance. If there is a single positive thing having to do with his body, his posterior seems to be the comparatively larger area of his body, and seems quite soft. But would you really want to take advantage of that? In another area, I believe there is a chance he could get somewhere someday, considering his family does also happen to be home to the ultimate male and female escorts, meaning some people must be interested in his type of physique, even if it doesn't look appealing to most. Either way, if he's going to find anybody, it'll probably be because of his cooking and not his sexual prowess. If you don't mind his appearance or volatile personality, well, get you the man who can cook, because this one can. If the previous two were like tiny stubs, the next few are more like little sticks. Certainly not as thin, but probably as short. Some of the men and boys in this tier wish they had more, and others are fine with what they already own. They might even be a small little beacon of hope. Or they're just lying. This is the below average tier, and each male in this tier possesses 3 to 4 inches in the pants. Now then, let's shoot on over to the first member. When you imagine a gangster, or more specifically a member of organized crime, who do you envision? Is it a shady man with a coat, some rude street thug, or big men in suits? And how do you imagine their lower weapons look? It must be impressive in order to please any of the number of women they manage in their industries. Woe be to Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu then, because he is almost none of those things. He's got the baby gangster look and the boy mafia size. As with the rest of him, he's probably very insecure about this length, and wishes he could grow into a bigger man. But the soft flesh dagger does not quite match the ferocity of a sturdy bamboo blade, so if anyone's going to be penetrating, it'll be his bodyguard girlfriend, Peko Pekoyama. Fuyuhiko may eventually grow to have a bigger one someday, but it seems that is simply not destined to happen, as he is still youthful to this day. At least he lives with someone else possessing a blade much bigger than his own. Imagine this, you're hanging out with one of your friends. This friend is a rather juvenile person, short and with their favorite colors being black and white. Two polar opposites, both representing a theme of truths and lies. You never know whether or not what he's saying is true, but you continue to believe that he has some greater intention. This boy also talks about his lower parts a lot. It's big, it's mean, and it'll destroy any hole it comes in contact with. Things get intimate. You're ready to have some fun. This boy comes onto you, and you both get ready for the big deed. He begins to slowly reveal himself. He has a surprisingly healthy physique for a small body, but that's simply impressive. And just when he's about to reveal his buddy underneath, he falls down. You would think he'd be hard, but it doesn't quite look like it. It doesn't look like much is there at all. You're looking forward to what this boy had to offer. Finally, he gets back up, forehead covered in blood from the fall, as he says the magic words to you.
It's a lie!
Kokichi Oma. I believe that every now and then people should take more time to appreciate the people who spend so long and hard working on the fiction they crave so desperately. In particular, those who have to draw frame after frame of content to make it both visually pleasing and physically stimulating. There is one out there who could go as far as to manipulate you with those techniques, but like he's actually brave enough to do it. The closest Ryota Mitarai will probably ever get to pleasing women is by drawing lewds that they would enjoy, or just drawing one of his own. I guess to make up for his lack of social skills and basic hygiene, he can just draw his own characters that he can use to please himself, and if he were to ever become successful in his career, well, his fans can do all the work for him, including a certain artist of doujin works. It's a small world, isn't it? Some men just want to please the ladies, and while they talk a big game, if anyone were to actually see what they have down there, then they'd be greatly disappointed. The plight of Leon Kuwata is relatable to many of us. He just wants a nice woman. Well, maybe just nice is giving him a bit too much credit. A woman with a nice body is probably a better way to describe it. Even during the middle of a killing game, he becomes desperate enough to accept a deadly invitation that didn't end in a steamy night, but rather in bloody misfortune. Not like what he has could impress anyone anyway. As chronicled by a good friend of mine, Leon's bat is similar to that of the ones he uses for his favorite sport. Straight and to the point, with a thick head to please, but maybe a painfully inserted piercing too. With someone like that, you would think he'd be swinging at all bases constantly, but unfortunately, it might as well be a dwarf. Short, but strong. Unappealing at first, until he attempts to use it. Either that, or he completely fails and whiffs the ball. Strike, someone's out. And as soon as Leon's body has been knocked in all sorts of areas within the batting cage, another boy comes out, shining like a light and brimming with that mystical thing called hope. His luck makes the good seem like bad, and I believe that's a very apt way to describe the Rod of Hope, possessed by Makoto Naegi. From the outside, he seems like somebody should probably wait to see how he looks when he gets older. And while we do eventually get that, he still remains rather low on the height scale compared to most of the other boys. But do not let his boyish looks fool you, because he has something beautiful to show the world. While few to none have ever seen it, legends tell that the light of hope shines brightly within Makoto's pants. Maybe Kyoko, definitely Aoi in another timeline, and probably his sister have seen it. And considering how much that hope was extended to them, let's just say Makoto's power spreads. Perhaps its influence helps hide the fact that it's rather small, but at the very least, it means no one will be mocking him for it. Sometimes size doesn't matter, but rather how one uses it, and Makoto's has it very good. The very last member of this tier is, an old man. Yes, I couldn't leave Kazuo Tengen out of this completely. Maybe in his younger years he could have been as much of a looker as his successor, but honestly I really don't want to imagine an old man's penis, and neither do you. So I'll spare you the details. It probably shrunk as it got older. Oh dear, we've expanded. Now we have a nice, healthy, average tier size of 5 to 6 inches. Perfectly average and able to please, the weens on these teens and men will give a pretty good time, provided the men piloting them can give a good ride, of course. We're also starting to see the men mature too, with more muscular builds and healthy bodies galore. But are they ideal partners? Well, let's get a move on. When it comes to desperate men, there's plenty of types. Some just really want any woman they deem attractive. Some keep their aspirations a secret for fear of rejection. And others like Kazuichi Soda are very adamant about their one true love. I mean, he has good tastes. Sonia Nevermind is a fine gal, but Kaz is quite a looker himself. But is what you see on the outside really how he is on the inside? Mr. Soda is quite insecure about himself, and I'm sure anyone who hears his story would gain some sympathy for him. They might even give him a chance. And really, he deserves one. He's tried very hard to become the man he is today, but it is quite unfortunate how obsessive he seems from an outsider's point of view. Not that that is okay, but once you hear his story, you almost understand his love. When he's not head over heels for his princess crush, he can actually be a pretty reliable man, and quite a good friend. As for his lower parts, I would say it's befitting of the kind of man he is, but just like the rest of him, is something he's insecure about, but really shouldn't be. And if his last name is anything to go by, once he reaches a climax, it must spray out like a good old soda pop. Maybe he should just use that to quench his thirst. I do hope he gets some acceptance someday, which seems to be the case now, and I'm quite proud of the man he became. The word dick can spawn from several points of origin. Of course, there's a meaning that relates to the subject of this project. There's also the fact that it's a nickname for Richard. There is one other meaning that relates quite well with our next subject. If you spin it the right way, Ultimate Detective turns into Ultimate Dick. And look which Ultimate Detective happens to have one. Shuichi Saihara, the poor boy with dead potential partners all around, is the one lucky enough to have that talent. But how does he use it? Well, let us remember his job of researching the escapades of cheating lovers. You could say he uses his pleasure area as a lie detector, which could explain how he became proficient at telling lies. It arises when it detects that a woman has been cheating on her man, and as soon as Shuichi is able to confirm that, it's off the slammer for the unloyal lover. And with that, it's a job well done for Shuichi Saihara, Ultimate Detective with the gun of man's passion and justice.
I agree.
There's some people out there who are completely average. Simply unremarkable human beings who can be a blank slate for outside forces to influence. Yet, when I look at a man like Hajime Hinata, I do not see an average man. Sure, his appearance is plain when compared to the weird and wild attires worn by everyone else, but his personality is one of realism and bluntness, which is actually quite refreshing in this wonderful world of Danganronpa. Similar to Kazuichi, I think Hajime would actually be a pleasant guy to be around. Well, as long as he isn't complaining about his crippling normalcy. But as befitting an average man, so does he have an average penis. But Hajime himself is hard, surprisingly hard, and when he is hard, he can be quite efficient with what he has. Not like he had time to show anyone that efficiency, but there is a latent lewdness within him, as shown by the power of the man's nut. He would eventually become one of the greatest after this little thing called hope was put inside him, but that is for a later time. Hope's Peak Academy towers over everything around it, and you might expect the headmaster of such an academy to have something resembling that peak within his pants. However, Jin Kirigiri was a punished man. He came from a long line of detectives, but rather than follow the family tradition, become one of them himself. He put aside the dick life in favor of managing the most prestigious school in the nation. Maybe he just wasn't up to standards for the Kirigiri name, or maybe he was simply punished for refusing his destiny. We may never know, but at least whoever he mated with gave birth to a beautiful daughter. Speaking of Jin, if it weren't for the fact that he had already become one with someone else, this next man would probably be right alongside him. Even then, Koichi Kizakura kept a tight bond with his best friend, even watching out and sacrificing himself for Jin's daughter after he was murdered. I'm not entirely sure how far back the two go, but it'd be a nice headcanon if Kizakura helped Jin find his late wife. Even then, he's still got the broest cock around, as he is the ultimate bro. The world is a great place with many exotic locales, and especially people to have fun with. Unfortunately, several of the talented high school kids within Danganronpa have probably never even left Japan. It's quite unfortunate, but at least there's one man who has traveled all around the world in search of his missing siblings. Rentaro Omami is the man with the title of Ultimate Adventurer, and while he's never discussed much about his travels, there's very little doubt that along the way he hadn't seen some very attractive exotic beauties. Whether the man or woman, I dare say Rentaro should have the whitest taste of all, whether they be black, white, or anything in between, but not both at the same time, like a certain bear. Of course, we also don't know if he's actually performed these highly physical activities with the people he's met, but if he has, then he should know all kinds of worldly techniques from anywhere on the globe. But I wouldn't be surprised if he hasn't actually done any of that. He seems like a very dedicated brother after all, and I hope one day he finds his sisters and does not try to do anything to them. After all, he wouldn't want to end up like a certain other man. But I guess anyone who's seen Rentaro's would say that it's quite the odyssey. I'll proceed this next portion by giving you a valuable lesson. It's probably not a good idea to use drugs. It's something that's been told to people for ages, I know, but if you ever do feel like using them, you may just feel like the ultimate clairvoyant. No one can truly know what's up with Yasuhiro Hagakure, but he looks like the kind of guy who's gone in and out of various trends over the 20 plus years of his life. And by trends, you can probably guess what I'm talking about. Some substances can do weird things to both your mind and your body, and I wouldn't be surprised if Hagakure has tried some before. He probably believes his set of fortune-telling balls is bigger than it actually is, but most of the time he sees it in detail is because he's high, and when he's high, he feels like he can conquer the world, but it's probably just ended up embarrassing him on many an occasion. Despite that, whenever he's actually gotten the chance, legends say he has a 30% chance of impregnating a woman 100% of the time. Whether or not that's something to be concerned about is another matter. Let's just hope he didn't get stuck with any illegitimate children over the years. It seems like anyone in Danganronpa who's involved with gangs ends up getting the shorter end of the stick. Sure, Mondo Owada's little ride might seem impressive to some, but it simply does not match what his brother had. Honestly, the difference probably increased the tension between them. The big, strong Dai versus the comparatively average and weak Mondo. But as the Diamond Brothers, they probably use that crazy diamond ability to heal others through the power of their combined Dickens. Mondo's power was just a little less efficient, just like he was compared to his little brother. He never really had anything to be ashamed of, but everyone else was simply bigger, because there's always a bigger fish, a bigger shark, a bigger dick. I guess similar to Mondo, the next subject exhibits a harsh exterior, but both on the inside and even a little bit on the outside. He's as gentle as a man can be. Or, in other words, Gonta is real gentleman. What he has may not be what one considers as long as a tree trunk, but it's certainly decently average in length and as thick as you'd expect from the developed tree that is Gonta. Thankfully, he is usually sure to be as gentle as he can given his physique, which is quite admirable given his other-toned brethren. However, if you happen to upset the man while being pleased by him, deeper within his gentle interior lies a strong latent power that few have seen, but those that have can still feel it to this day. Whether you want that or not is all on you, but I'd advise that you never, ever upset this gentleman from the forest, or he'll keep you up all night. Things keep just getting bigger and better, and I'm sure plenty of people appreciate the kinds of dongs you could expect from the prior males, but starting from here, we're sending to some very lengthy territory. Whether you're just a bit above average or cut above the rest so far, these men will certainly give you a good bang for a good price, if they're willing to take payments of course. Anyhow, let us commence the above average tier, in which all the men here possess a length of 7 to 9 inches. Will you be able to contain it? Well, we shall see if that's the case. Let's be honest here. Kids can be very annoying. I mean, the boys can't even hope to please anyone with things that small. Oh, that's not what I was supposed to say? Oh, right, because the next subject actually prefers to small girls instead. Preferably young. Real or 2D, we don't know. Haiji Towa can get a bit of a bad reputation for his preferences, but you can't deny he's slightly justifying his hatred of children when they're out and about murdering everyone over the age of 13 in the city. But that kind of discussion is for another place. While Haiji may lead an adult rebellion, possessing whatever weapons they can scrounge up, there's always one weapon by his side, or rather, right in front of him. But using it is a risky endeavor that would probably kill Haiji before it gets any use. But that sword could probably puncture through some of those kids. Just the idea of that is enough to disgust one as much as the actual kids he hates. But who exactly are the ones he loves? I'm not sure, but at least Haiji himself is a rather handsome guy. If only he wasn't so vengeful. Sometimes the biggest things come in the smallest of packages, and this certainly won't be the last of those examples on this guide. But hey, Ryoma Hoshi certainly has balls of steel, and not just the ones he used to kill the Yakuza, but a pair all to his own. It certainly matches his manly but tiny frame. Ryoma's quite packed under there, and given how familiar he is with balls, he'll be able to endure for a long time when swinging his racket. Given the relation between the size of it and the rest of him, it may even be half as long as his torso. Of course, I'm not one to look much into proportions, so that may be giving even him too much credit. Unfortunately, if you're ready to lift his day, you may have to look for someone else, as Ryoma is already quite taken with another person, even if his lost Lenore was executed by some vile gangs. Well, if you're gonna try anything at all, at least do not get him near water or fish. They haven't really done the best for him. And in what is probably the polar opposite of the short but stout Ryoma, we have the long but lanky Korekiyo Shinguji. When it comes to the men who are probably most knowledgeable about the different ways to please someone else, Kiyo may just be near the top. He's learned from the many different cultures around the world, but especially those of classic Japanese legends. Have you ever seen the kinds of things yokai could do? That's the kind of man we see with Korekiyo. Thankfully, he will not usually use these techniques against anyone else, because his eyes are for one and only one girl, his sister. I cannot be entirely sure exactly what the two of them did before she died, but it's obvious Korekiyo is learning these techniques so that eventually he'll be able to please his sister in the afterlife for some crazy spiritual exercises. Either that, or the many women he's killed are having fun with her instead. You can never really tell when she's a ghost. But alas, a ghost with a nice posterior. I wouldn't be surprised to learn if he has done research on ways to mate with spirits. Getting some ectopleasure has to be an inspirational experience. Still not a very good idea to do anything with the sister though. Please do not have sexual interactions with your siblings. When almost all hope is lost, one man arises to lead the way. No, not Makoto Naegi, he's too small to accomplish that mission. I'm referring to a certain Kyosuke Munakata, the Future Foundation's true hope. Together with his despairful girlfriend and unrequited best friend, he attempted to lead the world into a brighter tomorrow. But instead, all that happened was he became a white shadow of false hope against Makoto's even greater hope. But there is one other hope contained within Munakata, and the one thing he has over his rival: the Spear of the Future. Its light shines brightly, and so does its force. Many a night has Chisa had with it inside of her, and considering her continued devotion to Munakata even after years of being infected by despair, Munakata's spear has enough hope inside of it to reduce anyone's despair, even if the effect is temporary. That mystical power could have been quite a prize for Juzo, but he is still yet to come. Munakata's light may have dimmed following the final killing game, but one day he and his blades of hope will surely rise again. The oft-referenced, but not read light novel Danganronpa 0 contains some interesting characters, and while I don't really have much to say regarding the original cast of this story, there is one, or should I say 8, characters who do garner interest. Ishiki Madarai and his 7 identical brothers form the ultimate multiple birth siblings, otherwise known in the streets as the ultimate Bang Gang. If one happens to attract another, the unlucky victim will be subject to an assault of 8 identical persons ravaging every hole possible in the body. Some say it's a murder weapon, and others insist it's a pleasure device. You can never underestimate some people's fetishes. But the ultimate brothers will leave their marks no matter what, expanding each hole with their identically sized 8-inch penetrators, and using their long snake-like tongues in a number of grotesque, slithery ways. When the job is done, the victim is left with remnants of the experience, but never any memory of what happened. One has to wonder if any of their clients has requested them specifically for this phenomenon. But at the very least, you should know you are always in good hands with Ishiki Madarai. It's quite surprising that despite the amount of eligible bachelors and handsome males present within the Danganronpa universe, very few of them are actually in a relationship with someone else, if not attracted to another person in the first place. One of the few grand exceptions to this is Sonosuke Izuyoi, but unfortunately, his lucky lady isn't nearly as faithful as him. Izuyoi can build weapons of all kinds, but has he ever put those skills to use in other areas? Ruruka probably knows, being one of the few women likely to have had lots of experience with men. Izuyoi is probably more experienced with steel and other metallic resources, but who says he hasn't made some interesting presents for his beloved? Maybe some rubber, maybe some vibration, or simply plastic. His techniques go above and beyond what he would be capable of with his natural blade, which is pretty nice as is. When it comes to all the sweets in the world, Easy Yoi's is probably the sweetest. The taste has most likely inspired a few of the delectable creations of the Ultimate Confectionist, and is most definitely her favorite lollipop. A great, big, hard, fleshy lollipop, but the one that keeps on giving. He stayed faithful for years and years for a reason, even upon getting that one tiny ball in his death. Just hope his lower weapon doesn't shoot too hard. The achievements of mankind have inspired many over the grand history of our world. We first learned how to tame beasts, then we created vessels that sailed the seas. We created machines that would automatically move us great distances. The skies were conquered as humanity created wings. Boats went below the surface of the ocean, and we continue to find new ways to transport ourselves to this day. But the pinnacle of man's ingenuity is none other than reaching the stars, continuing to explore our great universe. But with all these innovations, one man's rocket desires to soar through the vast reaches of space more than any other.
Kaito Momota, luminary of the stars! You know the overwhelming force one blast off this man's ship can deal, but only those with the hardiness of an assassin would even dare wish to come in contact with the blazing end of Kaito Momota! His drill is the one that will not only pierce a hole into the heavens, but also every single human, alien, or interdimensional being who tries to get their hands in the ultimate astronaut. But not only does he have the ability to boom your insides, but he'll make sure you're durable enough to withstand it too! The only way you're getting with Kaito is by being as fit and strong as him, and by making sure to stay healthy every single day! He may not be the smartest man in the universe, but he has the heart to surpass whatever obstacle he reaches. There is no hole too small or too large, because for Kaito's drill, the impossible is possible! You just have to make it so!
Seems fitting to end the previous tier off with a man who aspires to reach the stars, as we have now soared past the single digits and have reached the overwhelming grandeur of the tenor tier. Every man here wields a weapon of 10 to 12 inches in length. These men scoff at those beneath them, or have the passion to grow such a large appendage to please another loved one. Compared to their counterparts of the opposite sex, these men are quite fewer in number, but each of them uses what they have to their best ability, even if they aren't quite the biggest of them all. The time has come, so let's take our feet and examine those who have feet. Some days the world is simply too light, especially when you have guys shining with their dingers out all the time, blinding everyone else in their presence. For situations like this, the Dark Overlord must come and take his rightful place, replacing the gleaming rods with one great dawn of darkness. And his name is Gundam Tanaka! As befitting of an overlord, his demonic weapon towers over the majority of other puny humans. Anyone who's got an eyeful of it either dies on the spot, or so enamored they get taken in by Gundam's dark demon below. Not only is it used for pleasure, but it has many other practical uses. When there is nothing else that can be used to create magic circles in his vicinity, just a bit of water and vigorous exercises can surround the demon in a dark aura which protects it from any and all damage. Using this, Gundam can easily make his mark and summon even more powerful forces to his side. Or in another case, he may just place a curse on your dick.
Alex, what the
Anything else he's capable of doing is beyond the understanding of man, but maybe not beyond that of animals. If he thought his magical powers were the extent of his abilities, oh no. But only the devil and possibly a European princess know what kind of things Gundam's furry friends can accomplish. Don't worry, I'll spare you the details and leave it to your imagination. Needless to say, however, among almost everyone else here, Gundam most certainly deserves his talent of Ultimate's breeder. Get with him and you'll find new ways to breed every single day. And all the while, he never breaks his composure, the Dark Overlord and his Dark Demon below. The majority of characters in the Danganronpa franchise are very attractive. Sure, you can chalk this up with the fact creators like making cool looking casts, but something quite interesting within the DR community is just how much lewd content exists of just the boys. That's not saying the girls don't get enough love, but the ones who believe in the mono-a-mono romantic relationships are some of the most dedicated out there. Surprisingly though, within the games and the majority of other media in the franchise, there hasn't really been a single male character confirmed to like another man. And the same is almost true for the women too, but the implications are even more obvious in that department. There is one exception to this, however, and he is certainly our gayest boy. The man who despises normal people, kicks them into the ground, and then smiles upon their defeat. A man who sacrificed the entire world for his love. The one and only Juzo Nut Sakakura. His plight is one probably understandable to many. His best friend, Kyosuke Munakata, noted earlier for his Blade of the Future, was in a relationship with one Chisa Yukizome, and it was a serious one. Juzo loved Munakata, but knew he couldn't impede upon his friend's relationship, so his desire was kept tucked away as he continued to help them out. But that the desire would grow, and it shows. If for whatever reason the moment came for him to finally show his love, he would do the best he damn could, because the hidden power he holds will hit just as hard as one of his world-renowned sucker punches. The length of his force is just as great as his passion, and will please anyone no matter who they are. But he reserves it just for the one he loves. The day comes and the championship match rings to a close. Juzo wishes to bring a mighty knockout to his adversary. It would be the most satisfying KO of all, but the world does not work that way. He's pushed to the ground, down for the count, with nothing left. His trust tested, his world shattered. Years later, when he gets caught up in another tragedy, he accepts his mistakes, and does the best he can to redeem himself. It might take a punching a manlet into submission, but he does it. Juzo Sakakura saves the day, never showing the world the pure passion he held for his beloved. It's a wonderful, tragic story, but he managed to save the day more than anyone else. To this day, I'm still damn proud of our boy Juzo, the greatest lover of his brother-in-arms to ever exist in the world of Danganronpa. There still remains two other men from the controversial Danganronpa 3. Unfortunately, neither lived long enough for us to really learn about them, so they get the share section. First up is a man who unfortunately barely lived long enough for us to see the full extent of his power. In the ring, he was a powerhouse worthy of an ultimate title, and his name is the Great Gozu! The power of his ram matches that of a raging bull, and his hands will milk any cow into submission. What makes him especially unique, however, is his signature move, the penetrating suplex. To make sure that his opponents cannot move whatsoever, the Great Gozu will restrict them by inserting himself, then jumping into the air and slamming them backward. If they happen to be a fairly comfortable fit, then Gozu will leave his mark in another way as well. It's always an instant KO and an instant CUM2. As for the other big DR3 man, we have the big but gentle and light-voiced Daisaku Bandai. If Teru is a soft baby carrot, then Bandai is a great, big, black, crunchy one. The voice might be odd, but the rest of his body surely is not. A true man of BBC if I've ever seen one. Unfortunately, that blackness has just been outshined by the biggest man of culture the world hath seen. No one has ever truly seen the grand staff of Byakuya Togami, for it possesses a very unique trait. In keeping up with the rest of his family, Byakuya's saber shines brightly like the sun, blinding anyone not worth or rich enough to see it. In fact, the only reason why Byakuya would ever reveal it to someone would be if he planned on making a successor to his empire. His cold, stern personality and highly brilliant shield of focus also means he rarely ever gets aroused by something. However, at the rare occasion where he does see the need to make a child comes up, he shall reveal himself in the most glorious of fashions. During preparation for the baby making, his pants will start glowing with the light forming beneath them. Then, as a sophisticated gentleman does, he begins to slowly take off his garments to allow his partner to get a view of his perfect form. Once he removes his trousers, to get a full view of his elite, custom-made underwear with the Togami name plastered over it. The light is just brimming out by now, barely contained by the blackness of the royal undergarments. Finally, as he takes it off, a shining light streams out, illuminating the entire room and mesmerizing his partner with a full view of his foot-long member of light. He then follows immediately by using his vast knowledge of different techniques to both pursue his partner and guarantee a child will be made. At the climax, the entire room bursts with light. The following experience is so great that words simply cannot explain the pressure given by the Togami gift. Its 100% rate of impregnation makes it perfect for mating with partners, and guaranteeing each time that a new member of the family will be added with just a single shot of his holy substance. It's no matter he was the first to have his child born in an alternate timeline. Of course, the only reason he even tried to mate with Aoi was because she was the most suitable mother in that situation. But outside of a killing game, his standards are by far the highest of them all. As per tradition with his family, he will simply not keep one wife, but rather mate with as many fine women as possible. When the time comes for a new heir, Byakuya will shine his dick of light out to the world and keep the Togami family alive for all of eternity. The economy has changed. The world is becoming reconnected as the bridges continue to expand beyond that of an average man. The pillars rise out of their cages, and the fungi start growing into mighty forests. The flesh is tougher than steel and more resilient than diamonds, and their power is comparable to a vigorous cannon, pumping in and out until there isn't a single drop of the life liquids left. Embrace the ultimate Chad tier! The men taking residence here are all special in their own unique ways. Well, aside from one exception. Either their size is over that of a foot, or 30 centimeters for my father viewers, variable depending on the situation, or simply unknown. But the sheer magnificence of their lengths and how they use them are what get them here. Now then, time's a wasting, and I'm sure everyone here is desperate for relief. So let us reach ever closer to the climax. Have you ever heard of the concept of Schrodinger's cat? Well, it's likely that you have, but for those that haven't heard of it somehow, essentially, there's a box. Or for the sake of analogy, pants. Within the box is a cat, and some poisonous substance that could kill it if it consumes it. There's also a non-poisonous substance that will keep the cat alive. You cannot see inside the box, so you do not know the state of the feline. There is no way to tell whether the cat is dead or alive, so the only assumption you can make is that the cat is both dead and alive at the same time. This weird kind of temporal states between life and death can also apply to other objects, so let's refer back to my pants analogy. Now, what is contained within a man's trousers? His penis. Something unique to men compared to women is that you cannot tell how big their hidden shame is most of the time unless you get a full view of it. Of course, this shouldn't matter because most of them still have one consistent size. The keyword here being most. There is one boy who we don't know whether he's big or small. You may know him for his love for hope may or may not be as big as his schlongdinger. Nagito Komaeda. As the ultimate luck, the true statistics of his hope rod are unknown. In fact, they seem to be able to change depending on the situation. Either it'll be a massive, thick, extremely versatile pleasure device, or it'll be a puny, wimpy thing that forever stays flaccid. Getting with someone in the first place has an aspect of luck, and considering his famous luck cycle, how would it go? Would he finally get with someone but then be cursed with a tiny one with no ability to release? Will he be rejected, but only then will it appear as something attractive? Or is it simply both big and small at the same time, never truly staying in a single state within the hopeful crotch of one lucky man? What even is this Mr. Komaeda? Does he even exist? Is it all fictional? No, it can't be, I'm just thinking too much. But that Schlongdinger's penis certainly requires much more research. Maybe then we could control it just like his luck. Oh, that'll be the day. Except not, because the next few are even better. Somewhere out there are people in the world who do not even know who they themselves are. Maybe they were left somewhere with no help from a young age, before they could even remember. Maybe they were simply abandoned at birth, completely ignored by any parental figure. Some of these children will choose not to create their own identity, but they take that of another's. This disguise will be who defines them. However, natural growth will usually almost always guarantee you're not really the person who you are trying to be. Sometimes you will need to take some rather drastic measures in order to fit that person. And if you wish to copy them in almost every way possible, there is one certain thing you must do. The ultimate imposter knows what this certain thing is. It can be quite painful and possibly result in several medical problems. Many believe it would be simply impossible. Somewhere out there, he's supplied with certain types of drugs, maybe in the shape of a pill. These pills have a certain purpose, one of which men will take advantage of in order to impress someone else. The ultimate imposter sees another use for these, however. In order to truly replicate those he disguises himself as, he must also duplicate their lower part. After all, if someone who is attracted to the disguised person happens to become intimate with the imposter, and is very familiar with the original's family jewels, they might realize at the moment of the reveal that the person who they are about to have fun with is not the same person they know. So, after thoroughly analyzing the subject's gift, he used to carefully calculate the number of pills to match every facet of the gadget, from length to shape to girth, curves, and possibly even adding some extra synthetic skin to really sell the disguise. You can never be too careful as an ultimate imposter. Unfortunately, all this manipulation has more or less erased the original thing, so the stats on the original mini-imposter are completely unknown, and probably lost forever. Not like it matters, since this man will do anything he can to fit your exact needs. Within human limits, anyhow. Speaking of humans, it's about time we get to something inhuman. Ever since the release of the public demonstration for Danganronpa 3, there has been one question on everyone's minds. A mystery so profound. To this day, it still hasn't been given a solid answer. I personally am only going off of speculation myself, but let me ask what you, the viewer, think. Do robots have dicks? I know it's a complicated thought. It's something that would require years, decades, maybe even a century of studies to determine. Scientists themselves can't even figure it out. But I have a theory about one robot who may indeed have a dick, or at least got one added by a certain well-endowed inventor. An inventor who has shown herself to be quite the interesting girl. If so, this mechanical being may as well have the most versatile remote of them all. K1B0, otherwise known as Kibo, might be ashamed of it, and keeps it hidden away within his built-in parts. However, if the time ever comes to please his master or anyone else, they will surely get a full view of the fully customizable, fully upgraded, and fully capable newest version of the Iruma Inventions Robo-Cock. This mechanized rod has all the functions of a machine with the willpower of a man. A retractable, adjustable length, and air-compressible growth adjustment assures that any hole can be pleasured, no matter how small. Special synthesized skin gives it both the smoothness and rigidity of an erect penis and can grow or shrink to simulate foreskin at all times. Maintenance may be required. But that's not all. It has the ability to vibrate at any time, both for use inside and outside. Additionally, a special Iruma original liquid substance simulates the pleasure of being shot inside, with none of the risk of pregnancy involved. Note, substance may or may not use remnants of men's previously shot semen. Along with that, other liquids are stored in a special bank hidden inside 2 round containers near the bottom, fully customizable but pre-filled with lube and a sterilizing solution to clean from the inside. And don't let a robot allow any diseases to spread. There's a portable STD scanner so you can make sure no AIDS gets on this robot, or any other person involved. These with 3 or more participants. And to finish the job, you need to clean up the results, so an automatic preloaded tissue dispenser is provided, located above the penetrating apparatus. Unfortunately, with this many functions the price is already getting quite high, so consider the number of other Iruma Inventions Robocock expansions. the Flaccid Pack, for those who want to experience unamused RoboFlesh, the Double Pleasure Pack for the special lady in his life with another spot to be satisfied, among other ones including a boombox module for moody music, including synchronized rhythmic vibrations, adjustable bump/spikes, flashlight flasher with a myriad of color options, flexibility upgrades, and much, much more. Pre-order now, if it even exists. Throughout this entire list, we've paid attention to many different kinds of penises, from the Blades of Hope, to the randomized Schlongdigger, the genetically modified family jewels, and now, the robotic gadget of the future. Now, all of these are quite nice, and big, but they all lack a certain something, some kind of natural flavor, if you will, because no matter how much supernatural concepts, medicine, or technology can improve a dick, no one can ever really match the real thing. So of course, all of the previous guys pale in comparison to the one true man. And he is, as some would say, quite the shit.
Shit! It's Nekomaru Need-Eye, baby! Let's cut the bullshit! It's time to realize what's the manliest dick of them all! Nekomaru doesn't need to modify his own dick because he was gifted with everything he needed from the day he was born! As soon as he came out of the womb, he was rocking 4 inches flaccid and it only got bigger to reach a total amount of 10 inches flaccid and 18 inches hard!
25 centimeters and 76 centimeters
For you forward pussies! This man's dick is as thick as his biggest shits, which means it's really fucking thick! 2.5 inches thick! This man is going to destroy any ass or pussy it comes in contact with, and it'll leave a hole bigger than the Hiroshima crater! This thick is literally an atom bomb in your hole, but instead of dying of explosions or radiation pussy, your ass is getting a full explosion of the thickest cum in the goddamn universe, that feels like the entire galaxy is creating an orgasm! Speaking of orgasms, Nekomaru's abilities aren't even just contained in his pants, which you can clearly see all the damn time, and he doesn't even care to hide his massive bulge from the world! What a man! Along with providing the manliest cock on the block, he'll make sure your body is up to the task, just so you can take more of this monster dog! If you're gonna do it with him, you're gonna have to get fit, take a shit, and eat like a champion, because only champions deserve him! But that's not all, because you have the body to take him, Nekomaru will use his ultimate masseuse skills to make sure you climax before he even gets inside you. This man knows everything about pleasing you, and will use it before pounding that fine-toned bod you just got by training with him. Do I even have to continue? No, I don't! Just make sure you take a shit beforehand, because Nekomaru doesn't want any shit touching his pristinely polished penis. Ah! I'm so fucking hyped! I need to do something to get myself ready for this fucking tiger cock! Ah!
Wait, it's not over? There's still more? Yes, a few final subjects is all. If you truly, really believe Nekomaru Need-Eye will be the top dog, well, think again. We have ascended past the measly virgins, the average folk, and even those chads. In fact, the final few are so incredibly massive that measuring them is simply impossible, or at the very least, they are certainly bigger than 2 feet hard. These are the strongest, toughest, most towering of raw meats you could ever see. These could very well be called the ultimate dicks, but that title alone is not grand enough. It needs a name to represent how much they scrape the sky in comparison to their brethren, the tallest structures in the world possessed by man, the crown achievements of human genetics. In the real world, I believe there's a perfect analogy for these. And so, let's take a trip around the world once more as we ascend to the highest peak
Of the Burj Khalifa tier!
In the last tier, I posed the ever-mysterious prospect of robots having dicks. However, while that is still something people will be wondering about for many years to come, there is one more question that rears its head toward the Danganronpa community. It has been discussed and debated for much longer than Kibo's Wii Remote. And that question is this: does Chihiro Fujisaki have a massive dong? Now, you might be wondering how the small boy could possibly have something bigger than the king of men known as Nekomaru Nidai. But the evidence is there. Nekomaru constantly exhibits huge bulge, but Chihiro is a little more conspicuous with how he hides male shame in public. Do you see his skirt? Now, let's examine the skirts of the other female cast members of the Danganronpa games. In Trigger Happy Havoc, the characters with the widest skirts proportional to the length and thickness of their legs are Celestia Ludenberg, Toko Fukawa, and, what's this? Chihiro. Now, Celestia's is likely propped open to maintain her elegant gothic appearance, and Toko's skirt width gives her legs some room to move around given the long length of it. Chihiro's skirt reaches about halfway between his pelvis and knee, similar to Sella's and possibly propped a bit as well. However, there's still ample space to fit a certain something inside. Now, let's look at Chihiro's underwear. Notice how he wears fairly wide bloomers that could disguise the appearance of that special thing. Next, there's the other times we get to see Chihiro outside of the killing game. His days in Hope's-Peak had him wearing a more conserved skirt that wasn't quite as wide. However, I shall address this later. There's also the PE photo that shows him from a distance talking to Junko and Oshima. We know how much Junko tends to plan forward for her actions, and it's possible that seeing Chihiro poorly disguising himself during PE led her to use his identity as a boy as a motive for someone to kill. Anyway, back to the skirt difference. It has been said that each student's uniform when they enter the school is of their own style or choosing. While some will simply wear their old high school uniforms, others will customize their look to appear as cool as possible. So in other words, they would only wear these uniforms when they first entered the school. Chihiro could very well be a late bloomer, so when he first entered Hope's-Peak Academy, he still hadn't fully grown out his stick. However, later on, near the end of the Despair arc of Danganronpa 3, we get a good look at all of the students again. All of them are wearing their old uniforms, including Chihiro. But why though? Well, I do not know for sure, but it's certainly possible that Chihiro could have started fully growing since then, and needed the extra space provided by his old skirt to hide his exponentially enlarging equipment. This is the same skirt he wears in the killing game. His old memories were wiped, so he woke up with a strange feeling under there, and upon getting an eyeful of his matured, he knew he couldn't stay the way he was for long. He needed to get stronger, so he went to Mondo in order to become stronger, so that one day he could present himself as a man and stop hiding his shame. He didn't need the skirt to be propped anymore, because having it flaccid would do enough to keep it up. All 1 foot of a flaccid penis, slumped and presented with the ever-present fear of getting aroused and revealing his truth. He and Mondo were about to trade, and Mondo was already getting jealous of Chihiro's resolve. Finally, Mondo was hit by a startling revelation. In the changing room, there would be no way for Mondo to avoid seeing Chihiro wearing less reserved clothing, as well as changing and likely examining his body. And sure enough, once Mondo caught sight of Chihiro's massive masculine meat, he could not let such a monster get out there and destroy the world, ruin his reputation, and most of all, make him look like a goddamn pussy. So he would be the strongest, biggest man, and could not take the sight of this small boy with a weapon greater in size than his arm. And so, Chihiro fell. No one could ever live to see what exactly it looked like at maximum attraction. But the sight of it would be more horrific than anything in the world. So the final conclusion is, Chihiro does indeed have a massive dong. It held up the skirt during the killing game and created jealousy from another that resulted in his death. No one would ever see his true mark of a man. I salute you, Chihiro Fujisaki, with the biggest wing to ever exist in Danganronpa, but it's not the biggest. Did you really think it was going to end like that? With such an obvious choice? It's boring, an obvious punchline, a forced meme, it's an infection. All of this is but another strain of the virus that is mankind. Many weapons exist within the world that can cause total destruction, but people rarely ever live in the fear of the very things that can wipe them out at any time, anywhere. Instead, what humans fear most is what is close to them, the objects they possess. Humans also wish to possess more, and it constantly feeds off of a vicious cycle of pleasure, pain, loss, and boredom. Boredom requires pleasure to satiate. Pleasure ensues pain. Pain creates the loss. Finally, the loss leaves a hole, which only ends in boredom. The cycle begins anew, just like that of an average day. Endless cycle of waking up, eating, working, pleasure, sleep, and repeating that every day for your whole life. But even within this cycle, the one section that will change itself the most is pleasure. Pleasure can be obtained in a number of ways. For many, however, that lust for power is the greatest source of it. Humans will do whatever they can to have a taste of a greater purpose in life, to have someone under them, and to use them for things many others would find disgraceful. Once this taste has dissipated, it will hide the cause, but it will always come back to bite them. People will find a source and try to obtain their sense of power, and it will never stop. Men possess a demon that requires this cycle more than any other, one of the most vicious of all, and has ruined the lives of many in its rampage of terror. It needs to wake, it needs to be fed, it needs to work, it needs to be pleasured, and then it needs to rest. It follows its own cycle separate from man, but will constantly remain attached, lusting for fuel only to help in the short term, and this fuel will ruin the many who have seen its power. The possessors of this demon can do no more than regret and apologize, but they cannot deny that the victims of the demon led them to doing these things willingly. They have lost everything, all due to an effort to feed the greatest monster of them all. Yet, it remains boring. People will move on. They will not care. Life continues. The infinitely stretching expanse of the cycle continues. This never-ending cycle. Awake, eat, work, please, sleep. 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 Pleasure, pain, loss, and boredom.